In this video, I want to talk about verse 145 of the Havamal, which, for me, when I first read it, it's something that sort of impressed itself upon me, especially considering sort of the first few weeks of me having had the experience I had and sort of stepping fully committed into a Sartre. Because one of the things, I suppose, that really weighed heavily on me was an event happened, which I covered in some other videos. Obviously, Odin made himself known to me in a nutshell. And then I had to decide how much I let this change of events impact my life, in that I had certain casual practices, but I wasn't over the top, shall we say, or I didn't want to fundamentally change who I was by committing to being a heathen, to a Sartre. So reading this verse in the Havamal was a real sort of, I suppose, comfort more than anything else. When you read it, especially the Jackson Crawford translation, which was one of the first translations of this verse I read, it is better not to pray at all than to pray for too much. Nothing will be given that you won't repay. Now I read that and it's sort of, we have been given our gifts to live our lives with a certain amount of autonomy, and obviously we have, or it's within our power to establish what sort of working relationship we have with the gods. And I read that as, don't bother us too much, because you might as well not pray at all, because don't be that person that's, I don't know, stubs your toe and is like, oh, please send me healing, or not to. You don't have to spend every minute of every day thinking I've got to make devotions or prayers to the gods, to the Aesir, to the Vanir, etc., etc., because this is Odin's words, and he's saying it's going to have about as much effect as if you don't pray at all, i.e. nothing happens. It's just that sort of, I suppose we all have to take into account some consideration that while we want to commune with the gods, they're not necessarily going to commune with us. They've got better things to do with their time sometimes. That's that sort of, I try to adopt this into my practice, is that I don't declare that the gods are present. If I'm doing a ritual, I invite them. I hope that they will sort of bless any ritual I do, but it's not a prerequisite. It's a working relationship. And I think that's sort of paramount to these words. The section, nothing will be given that you won't repay. I given a lot of thought into that section as well, because on one hand, it's almost like saying you've already got the ability to deal with whatever problem is laying in front of you. So you don't really need to ask for help anyway, but you can sort it out. Or alternatively, if you ask for too much, the downside is the repayment for that is going to be more than you would probably want. And it's that sort of almost like an adult-child relationship in some ways, where it's, I can help you. It's a lot better if you do it yourself. You can do this yourself. You should do this to yourself. Go do the thing. You don't have to ask us to help you. We'll be proud of you if you do it by yourself without asking for our help. And if you're really insistent, then yeah, we will help you. But there's always a payoff to that lesson, to that effect coming down and achieving your goal, that draws the attention of one of the gods or whoever you're petitioning, to take something that you might not think you want to pay, but it's going to be equal to the task that you've enlisted or drawn this power from to achieve for you. So I think it's really, as 3 lines in a verse within the Havamal go, they're quite powerful lines that you can take at face value and then sort of look around sort of the subtext of what's not being said or being polite about being said, to achieve a good working relationship with the gods. Now obviously the next section is, it is better to sacrifice nothing than to offer too much. And I think this goes again to really that previous line where there's nothing will be given that you won't repay. It's, again, it's establishing, more than anything, understanding between yourself and the gods. This for me, let's say, is a critical verse in the Havamal and for your practice. And obviously the latter section is, Odin carved this before the birth of humankind when he rose up and returned again. So it's just that sort of, this is establishing the principle of how we as humans should be connecting to the Aesir. And it's just, yeah, it's pretty right there to accept, to understand, and to almost as well endorse, be who you want to be, and just that sort of relationship will be as it needs to be. I think in many ways, as I've been going on this path, I feel Odin in particular respects anyone who can rely on themselves. I'm not saying you've got to do everything by yourself, but it's the ability to maybe look at a obstacle on your path and go, well, I'll deal with this. I don't need to ask for help from the gods or friends or family or whatever. It's that I will resolve this myself, because in many ways in the stories we've got, Odin is someone who spends a lot of time by himself, is reliant on himself, carries that burden of being the leader of the Aesir and all powerful, all wise, etc., etc. And it's, again, sort of not completely understanding the path of the All-Father, but understanding some of it. So verse 145, for me, this verse in particular, is a really powerful verse that I hold close to my heart because it just really, really speaks powerful in such a that one verse. So that's going to be that section covered, the notes on the Havamal here, and obviously, just as you're probably noticing, and depending on when you're watching this, I'm now sort of adding in the Ben Waggoner translation of the Havamal. It's a really good little book that I've got. His notes, having looking through his notes and everything, are look really well researched and take on board translations from Crawford, Larrington and others. So I've just added in one section of a Ben Waggoner translation. There will be more added in eventually, but that's going back on this playlist. So I'm going to complete this playlist by completing the Havamal, and then I'll be moving on to adding the Ben Waggoner translation to Rigsfula, which is a heavy subject still, I feel. But again, having a look at the Ben Waggoner notes in his book and translation of Rigsfula, it's just that sort of, there's some little things in there that start to give it a lot more calming qualities, I should say, and a lot more sense, while still having that issue of some troubling subject matter. That's for you to find in other videos, other playlists. I'll end there. Thank you very much. Happy New Year.